Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the recital hall tonight for our City Talk. And I, first of all, would like to acknowledge the original custodians of our land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, and acknowledge the people of the 200 nationalities who live in our city. Well, I hope you were able to enjoy the food trucks when you arrived and you were able to stand under Forgotten Bird Song and listen to the wonderful sounds of the birds from those beautifully crafted bird cages which have open doors and that record the bird song that the first Europeans would have heard when they arrived in Australia. It was one of our temporary installations for Art and About a few years ago, and it was so popular we have made it a permanent art installation. It's very beautiful. So we have a great lineup tonight for our panel, and I want to welcome our panel members, and I want to give a very warm welcome to David McWilliams, whose insight and forthright commentary will be familiar to many of you. Our world has 7 billion people, with a global population predicted to rise to 8 billion by 2030 and 9 billion by the middle of the century. Almost all of that growth will occur in less developed countries, and it will be accommodated mostly in cities with declining rural populations. But according to the International Food Policy Research Institute, if those 9 billion people in 2050 have the consumption of industrialised countries now, that consumption rate will be the equivalent to 12 billion people by 2050. The Institute's 2012 Global Hunger Index, its 7th annual report, shows hunger remains a serious global problem with tragically slow progress for reform. The report puts forward two visions of the future: an unsustainable global food system in which finite resources continue to be depleted at a growing rate, and an alternative in which access to food, to energy and to clean water improves, and the degradation of ecosystems is halted or reversed. The Institute's recommendations involve more responsible management of natural resources, innovative solutions for scarce natural resources, and action on the causes of scarcity, including climate change. But in an era of urbanisation, as with many other of our major challenges facing our globe, the solutions will involve transformations in how we construct and live in our cities. Across the globe, there is an upsurge of people challenging the conventional patterns of food supply and resource use. Cities and communities are pursuing more sustainable and ethical solutions. Sydney is no exception. We have a great and well-deserved reputation for our food culture, but how do we continue to sustain that food culture, eat well, and keep our consciences healthy? How we source our food, what we do to ensure everyone has access to fresh, healthy food, what we do with the leftovers are matters of public concern and public policy. It entails as a priority keeping agricultural land close to our city safe from encroaching development. We can't afford to build over farmlands of the Sydney Basin or sacrifice the inner market gardens to Botany Cemetery. That in turn means allowing for greater density in the city while still maintaining and improving urban amenity so that denser living becomes an enriching experience. In sourcing products for our own festivals and events, the city promotes ethical and sustainable catering, with a number of our suppliers signing up to a sustainability charter which commits them to meeting our ethical food guidelines. I know some of the shock jocks made much of this some years ago and took great delight in mocking such a policy, which we're indeed very proud of. We're also responding to a growing interest for community gardens and a city farm. Our city staff are working on detailed plans for our city farm in Sydney Park by 2014. And to maintain the enthusiasm, we'll be planting a southern garden there from January to March next year. The farm will have an important educative role and will further inspire our already keen community gardeners. There are now 16 community gardens across our local government area, the most recent one in Bourke Street, Woolloomooloo. 6 of our community gardens boast native beehives, and I believe they'll be harvesting the honey next year. We're also preparing a staff community garden on the Marconi Terrace, which I'm sure will fascinate you all, at Town Hall. This will provide a way of promoting growing produce in a small space, and it will also allow our staff to add fresh ingredients to their lunches. One of the positive spin-offs from this movement is the cross-city connections that it's fostering. The Burke Street gardeners are taking tips from the longer established Ultimo garden on things like crop rotation, record keeping and other skills. This reflects some of the exciting characteristics of the sustainable food movement. It's not just about access to good quality and healthy food products. It's part of an emerging cultural change that challenges the fossil fuel-driven model of growth and the failure to deal with environmental considerations. In reality, the major challenges of our time, climate change, population growth, fossil fuels, water and food, are closely and inextricably intertwined. To be sustainable, our food production needs to protect plant and animal diversity and provide for the welfare of farmed animals and wild species. It needs to avoid the depletion of natural resources and to help drive down the greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to climate change and the extreme weather events that in turn threaten food supplies. And there is growing and justifiable expectation that food production will contribute to thriving local economies and for imports promote sustainable incomes in the source countries. Some of you will have seen David McWilliams' documentary Addicted to Money. In it, he challenges the conventional wisdom and puts the pieces of the food, fuel and financial crisis together in a different way. We need David's innovative and provocative thinking to help create and promote a sustainable future. And I look forward to his talk and to our panel discussion. Thank you, everyone, for coming.